that's a tough act to follow after Will. That was a pretty impressive speech for a sophomore in high school. I was asked to, first off, let me introduce myself. I'm Bill Sullivan from Canton. I was a Xaverian graduate about 100 years ago. But they asked me to come and speak more, I think, as my role and experiences as a Xaverian parent. So I guess I'm probably talking more to the parents here. My wife and I have 3 sons, and all of them graduated from Xaverian, the last one about a year ago. And they are so different, all 3 of them, completely different. So as a result, we had 3 completely different experiences going through Xaverian. And I can tell you, all 3 of these journeys were tremendous. You know, the thing we found in the school is all the words that you heard in that video: community, encouragement, challenge. Those were found on all 3 of my sons. And so I was thinking, as we're sitting here, I sat through 3 of these things with each one of my sons. And so I probably thought of every question that is floating around this room right now. We sat there with one of them and said, uh-oh, is this going to be too hard academically for this one? Then we sat with another one and said, is this going to be not too easy, but it will be enough of a challenge with the AP? Is it going to help them get into a really good college? And we had another one that was saying, well, is he going to be good enough to make some of the athletic teams? Another one, we're thinking, well, is he going to be good enough to play the position he wants to be in? Is he going to be able to be exposed to college coaches if that's the things he wants to? And we had another one, and we're saying, well, what if he doesn't want to play athletics? Is there stuff here for him there? And then the other one, another question was, well, we have somebody who's very spiritual. Will they make fun of him when he's in a situation like this? And of course, we have one who says he's not very spiritual at all. Are they going to shove this down his throat? Is he going to like it? So we've seen virtually every question, I think, that you guys are thinking about. And so what I thought I'd do is maybe just kind of walk you through our journeys a little bit. And maybe you can see how the school can support and encourage everything. And we saw, and my wife was mentioning, that what this school really does is it treats every kid the same. The kid that's going to a Division I football scholarship gets encouraged the same as the kid who's doing very little extracurricular. They're all encouraged to be the best at what they can do. And that's what we found, because we had kids doing all kinds of stuff. But my first son came over here, and he was a decent student. Well, that's the way we put it. And he was a pretty good little athlete, but he wasn't real big, but he wanted to play football, came over here, played freshman football, and liked that. But then, as some of you will probably find, and some of you kids will find, then his friends started chirping. Friends from home. Hey, hey, Will, if you were back here, at home, you'd be starting linebacker. And I'm like, give me a break. But that's the stuff that was going on. And so then it kind of got into his head, and he said, I think I want to go back to the local high school. So we kicked that around for a while, and we went back and forth. And what I didn't want to see him miss the opportunities that were in this place. But what I found was that there were people here at Xaverian. I see Brother Ray was here, Coach Stevenson, the football coach. They talked to him, and they just encouraged him. They didn't force him, they encouraged him. And then my son came to us his sophomore year. He said, well, I've decided that I want to stay. And I told him that at that point, it's your call. And when I was coming here to speak, he reminded me, I called him and spoke to him, and he reminded me that how happy he was that he stayed. He said, I wasn't always happy, but I was happy I stayed because of the challenge. And it gave him the confidence, and he graduated from here, went to St. Bonaventure University out in Olean, New York. Keep that name in mind 4 years from now. Hidden Jewel, great school. And he loved it, and it forced him to go outside his comfort zone. He's got a great job now, and he tells me it's the best decision he made was staying. Then the second son came, and I figured, well, I got this thing figured out. All right, we know how this is going to go. He's going to play football like my other son, and everything's going to go very smoothly. Well, after playing freshman football, the second son comes and says, you know, I don't want to play football. I want to be a writer. You know? And he said, then he decides he's going to get involved in the arts over here. And that's when I said, you know, I don't know anything about the arts program here. All I know is athletics are good, academics are great. Well, I can tell you, again, the encouragement that he got from people in the fine arts department, people like Matt Kavanaugh and David Connolly, who was the director, and my son got to write a number of parts of shows here, and in all the productions here. They encouraged him to start an improv group, which they did, and they really, really encouraged that part of his development. And that son, when I talked to him recently, he said the same thing. He said, the best thing I ever did. He says, I'm not sure I would have had the guts to kind of try all these things about going on stage instead of being a hockey player or a football player. Try this other part of my life, and Xaverian was great for that. And so he's now gone to Marquette. He went to Marquette University and won the Chris Farley scholarship out at Marquette. I don't know if any people went, you know, Chris Farley went to Marquette. And so I always tell him, I said, I hope that this is for the older people, I hope that the Chris Farley scholarship was for comedy values as opposed to some of the other activities that Chris Farley did. And he assured me he did. And he's now out in Chicago trying to be a writer and soon to be moving to LA. So look for any, you know, comedy scripts from Connor Sullivan. So everybody's got to go up, they see that. And then we had the third one. He was a little bit better athlete, a little bit stronger student, so we saw as that went through the encouragement of going into a lot of these AP courses like Will talked about, and how Xaverian really kind of pushed them at the right level to start going to, you know, kind of a different level of college, is where he wanted to go. And he was a good athlete, so he was playing a couple of varsity sports. So now, at this point, I'm in the home stretch. Right? I got it licked. We finally figured this place out. And then one spring day, my son came home and he got cut from the baseball. And he was a good baseball player. And I can tell you, this proves this place isn't perfect because they made a big mistake. All right? So what stayed with me, though, is the next day, because this was doomsday at our house. I'm telling you, this was bad, and it didn't make any difference. He was, you know, MVP of the varsity soccer team as a sophomore. It was all conference. This was bad, and so the next day, though, he comes back. He says, you know, one of my teachers left a note for me and said that I heard that you got cut from baseball. I know how much that meant to you. Would you consider coming out for the track team? We could use you. And you know, he moped around for a day or two, and then he said, well, I think I will. You know, they want me to do that. And he did that. And it was such an encouraging thing from some teacher, you know, who probably would want to remain nameless, but it was something that I'll never forget, that he really reached out to this kid. And you know, the kind of, I won't say payback, but if you let me brag a little bit, by the end, when he graduated, he was voted the Student Athlete of the Year for Xaverian because of the track and the soccer. And so he said the same thing. He said, you know, if they didn't reach out and support me, I don't know what I would have done. And so he's done well. He's now a sophomore at the University of Notre Dame, majoring in biology. And so he's doing well, and said the same thing, all three of them, that this was the place for him. They encouraged him. And so just what I wanted to wrap up, when I was thinking of this, besides the kids, I was thinking there were kind of two people that kind of came to mind. And one is my father. And a year ago, I was speaking at Boston College High School. I don't know if people have heard of that place. But my father was being given the Alumni of the Year award at Boston College High School. So I had to go over and introduce him, and give a, kind of talk about him and present him over in Dorchester. And so the way I introduced him was that my father is the smartest man I know. And I went on to it, and we sat down after it was over, and people at the table were like, well, that was really the nicest thing you could say about your father. And I said, well, I'm only saying it because he's got a friend who always introduces my father, introduces him as, hey, this is Bill Sullivan Sr., the smartest man I know. He went to BC High, but sent his kid and three grandsons to Xaverian. So, and the other thought that came to me, and then I'll shut up and get out of here, was a quote about John Kennedy. Because the other thing that you keep hearing here is a challenge. It's a challenge. Because, this is not, my kids said this is not necessarily the easiest road. There aren't any girls here, and then you're not with your friends. You're out of your comfort zone. Athletically, you're gonna, really go up against some really good kids. Academically, smart kids. It's tough. It's tough. And so I always think of that. John Kennedy, when he was asked about the space program, he said in 1961, he said, well, our goal is to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And everybody's, oh, you're crazy. I mean, that's hard, why don't you pick a goal that's easy? And the quote he said in 1961 was this, and I think it kind of applied a little bit to Xaverian. He said, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. And because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and our skills, and because that challenge will help define who we are. And I thought that that's what Xaverian did for my boys. It defined their skills, it focused their energies, it challenged them, it made them better academically, it made them better athletically, it made them better socially, gave them confidence to get outside their little bubble. It made them better spiritually. It just made them better men, I thought. And so we couldn't be more pleased. I can tell you this, if you choose this place, sounds like I'm going to get a commission here, but, if you choose this place, you won't be sorry. But I always say, in 4 years from now, you'll be sad because it'll be over. I mean, it's just a great place, a great experience. So, congratulations to all you guys. I'll be floating around if anybody's got any questions. I can tell you the real story about some of the stories behind the story. But it's a great place. And congratulations.